Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you 8th grade learners joining me today. We are going to embark on a journey that goes way, way beyond just memorizing a bunch of names and dates. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the human heart. We'll explore how we handle the heaviest, most difficult moments of victory and defeat. We're looking at a huge turning point in American history, the end of the Civil War, and we're going to uncover the profound lessons of grace and national healing that it teaches us. So, imagine this. You're in the shoes of a victor after a super long, bitter, and honestly, incredibly painful conflict. You have finally won. Your worst enemy is completely at your mercy. What's your very next move? Do you use your power to punish them, make them pay for every single thing they've done? Or do you somehow find it within yourself to forgive them and try to build a lasting peace? It's a really tough question, isn't it? Well, this is exactly the monumental choice that faced the leaders of the United States in the spring of 1865. All right, Section 1, the exhausted, divided nation. Let's dive right in. To truly wrap our heads around the power of what happened, we first got to look at the timeline. The nation wasn't just fighting. It was completely, fundamentally broken. For 4 long years, from 1861 to 1864, the U.S. suffered through deep division and unbelievably heavy losses on both sides. By the time we hit the spring of 1865, things were at a breaking point. The Confederate forces they were just completely and utterly exhausted, starving, out of supplies, and totally out of options. Finally, on April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army found themselves completely surrounded. They were heavily outnumbered by Union forces and basically pushed entirely into a corner, with nowhere left to go. Which brings us to Section 2, Surrender at Appomattox. So, what happens next in this moment of absolute defeat for one side and total victory for the other? Well, it leads to, without a doubt, one of the most important meetings in all of American history. And the crazy thing is, the location wasn't some grand palace or massive Capitol building. Nope, it was Appomattox Courthouse, just this quiet, dusty little town in Virginia. Actually, it took place in the private parlor of a guy named Wilmer McLean. Fun fact, he famously said the war literally started in his front yard in 1861 and ended in his parlor in 1865. Kind of wild, right? It was right there, inside that modest house, that the top commanders, General Robert E. Lee of the Confederacy and General Ulysses S. Grant of the Union, finally met face to face. Let's pause for a quick second and use our critical thinking skills. It's kind of a classic homework question, but it's super important we actually get it. What exactly made this specific meeting at Appomattox the official end of the Civil War? Like, why do we point to this exact day and say, yup, that's when it was over? The logic here is actually pretty straightforward. This event was the final surrender of General Lee's main army to General Grant. See, General Lee commanded the primary fighting force of the South, so without his army, the Confederacy simply lacked the manpower, the organization, and the resources to keep fighting. I mean, sure, a few scattered skirmishes happened afterward, but the organized military resistance, it was effectively over. Appomattox was the decisive, undeniable turning point. Moving on to Section 3, Grace instead of Revenge. Now, we know the what and the where, but here's where we look at the how. Because what's really fascinating here isn't just the military tactics, it's the profound human empathy shown in that very room. Think about what normally happens to a defeated army after a brutal civil war. Usually, you'd expect prison camps, harsh punishment, treason trials, and just total public humiliation. But then look at General Grant's actual terms. He basically told the Confederate soldiers, hey, go home peacefully. They could keep their horses, and there would be absolutely zero punishment. It is a stunning, mind-blowing departure from the normal rules of warfare. Let's break down those generous terms, because they were very specific and super intentional. First, the soldiers could return home peacefully, no prisoners of war. Second, they were actually allowed to keep their personal horses. Grant knew these guys were mostly farmers, right? They were going to need those animals to plow their fields just to survive the coming winter. And third, a total guarantee of no punishment for simply laying down their weapons. Which naturally leads us to ask this incredibly important question. Why? Why on earth did General Grant choose not to punish the Confederate soldiers? I mean, he had the power. He totally had the right by the rules of war. So why choose mercy when revenge was sitting right there at his fingertips? The answer here really shows us what true leadership looks like. Grant, along with President Abraham Lincoln, completely understood that the ultimate goal was reunion and national healing. It wasn't about humiliation. You just cannot build a peaceful, united country on a foundation of vengeance and shame. Grant knew true leadership meant stopping the cycle of bloodshed right then and there. He set this quiet, respectful tone because, hey, the United States had survived, and the massive work of healing those deep, deep wounds had to begin with a gesture of profound respect. All right, Section 4. Why Appomattox mattered. You know, history isn't just a list of what happened. It's about what we learn from it. We're moving from the historical facts to the bigger moral picture of our universe. And that brings us to this truly beautiful piece of wisdom from Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. This perfectly bridges General Grant's historical act of mercy with a totally timeless spiritual truth. Grant acted as a peacemaker. He didn't just end a war, he actively paved the way for peace. True healing begins with forgiveness. When conflicts end, peace literally requires avoiding revenge. I want you to think about your own lives for a second. Think about times you've had arguments with friends or family. How often does trying to get even actually solve the problem? Basically never, right? Just as General Grant offered peace instead of revenge, we're called to forgive those who wrong us. Actions that reflect God's love are what actually bring unity after really hard times. So, I pose this to you. How can peace after war be a moral victory? Well, a military victory is one with weapons and strategy. But a moral victory? That's one with character, restraint, and love. Defeating an enemy is one thing, but conquering your own urge for revenge? Wow, that takes incredible moral strength. And finally, Section 5. Education and Biblical Morality. Let's pull the camera all the way back to the present day for a minute. Let's look at the core philosophy of the HeroesMart Academy Godly Learner series. This philosophy intertwines biblical morality with the education you receive every single day. Because here's the truth. Education without morality will hurt. You can have every historical fact memorized, you can absolutely ace every math test, and you can easily be the smartest person in the room. But if you lack the moral compass to use that intelligence for good, your education can actually become destructive. Just think about it. What is the point of being highly educated and, smart if you just keep making bad choices that hurt yourself and the people around you? True wisdom requires character. Just like General Grant needed way more than just military brilliance, he needed deep, solid moral character to offer grace at Appomattox. You need a strong moral foundation to navigate your own life successfully. And there is a beautiful promise tied to living this way. Romans 8:6-7 promises peace of minds to everyone who keeps their minds spiritual. When you align your education, your choices, and your reactions with biblical morality, like when you actually choose forgiveness over petty revenge, you aren't just making the world a better place. You are granting yourself a genuine, lasting peace of mind. And that, my friends, is the experience of a true godly learner. Which leaves us with one final, very personal question for you today. As you move forward with your studies and your life, will you choose to just be smart, or will you choose to be a peacemaker who possesses true peace of mind? The facts of history are already written, but the story of your character, that's something you're writing right now. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible moment in history with me today. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.